Welcome to the Camunda BPM online training, the overview module. In this module, you want to have a look at the Camunda BPM platform. You will have a first view of it. So I want to give you a short introduction into BPMN 2.0, into the process engine, how that works, how it behaves, all the components of the Camunda BPM platform. And I want to give a first dive into the technology, how that really works, how we can get the engine, how the connection to Java is done, so you get an impression how the whole platform works. At the end, I want to give a short outlook how we move on in the training. So I start with a demo live. So we use a small process I've prepared. It's a Twitter review process. So the business story behind is that if a company want to use Twitter for marketing purposes, but maybe doesn't trust their employees that much that you can just tweet. So they want to have a review process. So every time you tweet, it basically goes to your boss and the boss has to approve it. So this is what is done in that process. This process is a BPMN 2.0 process, maybe your first one. So I will briefly explain it. So we have a so-called start event. So if you have the tweet written, a new process instance is started. Okay, that moves on over the so-called sequence flow into the first user task. You see the small icons here. So this is a user task that will make that task appear on some kind of task list. We will see that in a minute. If the boss has reviewed the tweet, the process moves on. Now the engine has to decide if the boss has either approved it, so we go that way, or if he doesn't approve it, we go the other way. Then we see a service task. The small icon here is the service task. So we will automatically publish it on Twitter. So we will call it Twitter service to do that. When we did that, or we send the rejection email, we're basically done. So this is a joining gateway. It's the same gateway, but it's joining, so it doesn't do anything. We move on through that gateway, that sequence flow, and then we have a so-called end event. If we reach the end event, the process instance is ended. Okay, so this, I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty intuitive to understand. I hope so, at least. If you have any questions, we have our online meetings where you can ask any question. So keep them, make your note and ask them in the online meeting. So that's our process. Now I want to have a quick look at how that works in real life. So I go into the tooling. We have a web application shipped with the Camunda. There you can go into the so-called task list. So the task list is basically the view of the end users. So that's like your email inbox. So this is how the process engine can talk to you. These are the tasks I currently have. I'm the demo user. I don't have a lot of tasks to do. But what I want to do, I want to start a new Twitter demo process. I deployed that on the platform beforehand. I'll show you that later on. So I start that. For starting it, I get a form. In this demo, I use JSF to do the forms. We have a couple of different mechanisms to do forms. That's a different story for later, but at the moment I use simple JSF forms. So order them. This is my email, and we'll obviously do a hello world. Not sure, hello world, maybe not a good idea. I did that earlier, and you cannot tweet the same stuff twice. So hello online works. Okay. So I started a new process instance. That's my Twitter demo process. I can have a look at it. So that's the BPMN you know from earlier. But now I have one process instance, and this is exactly in the first step. So it's the review tweet task. So I have a task for, in this case, it's the demo user. I always use the demo user for reviewing. I show you that in the BPMN model, how I configured it. So I don't have to log out, log in again. Normally, it should not be in my task list, but in the one from my boss, obviously. Okay, but we accept that for the moment. Maybe start a second one just to show you the instance concept. So I do it now. I do some second tweet. Now I have two process instances running. Okay, they have different times, but both of them are in the review tweet task. That makes sense, I guess, right? This is a task list. Now for that user task, I configured again a form, a user interface. Again, it's a JSF form, could be something different again. So I see the data I entered earlier. So the data is stored together with the process instance in the process engine database. Okay, and I can decide if I approve or no. So I will approve it, submit. Yeah, no, basically my task is gone. I'm done. I can have a quick look at Twitter. Let's refresh that. So I see my tweet. That's fine. Yeah, so this is it from an end user perspective. I can switch to a different application we have. This is called Cockpit. Cockpit is the monitoring application. So there we see the whole state of our process engine. Is everything healthy? How many process instances we have? So we see our Twitter demo process here. We see that's one instance. We see one instance is currently running within the review tree. Yeah, that's the one I haven't yet finished. So I can have a look in the review tree. I see it's that step. I see the process variables. I could even edit them from a monitoring perspective, like an administrator. Make too much sense in that case. I can see basically the user task, who the user task is assigned to, and a couple of different things. And you can do a lot of things with that BPMN2. You can basically do filtering by clicking on the stuff. And there are a lot of things. I think you can explore that yourself a bit. We see a couple of features during the training when we need them. Okay, that's basically Cockpit and what we can do here. I want to switch back to my Eclipse. So what I have to do in order to get it running? I had the BPMN2 models. That's BPMN 2.0 is the standard. It's an ISO standard worldwide. It's adopted by basically any vendor nowadays. So that's pretty good to learn anyway, independent of which engine you use. We have an own BPMN module later. The BPMN model in the background is an XML. Okay, we don't go into any details at that moment, but I think it's worth to have a look that this is pretty straightforward. So it's a process, a service task, an exclusive gateway, user and event. Somewhere should be the user task. So that's pretty straightforward actually to read. It's standardized as well. We have a couple of things we do in the BPMN 2.0 in order to get it running. For the, I think the easiest thing is the service task. In order to get a service task running, we basically attach Java code to that service task. So the publish on Twitter has a couple of things you can configure here. By the way, I use the Eclipse modeler. So we have an Eclipse plugin to model your BPMN within your IDE. Okay, there I can add properties. What I do here, I use expression language. I use the Java Unified Expression Language. So I think that's pretty common in the Java world, using JSF and various other places. So there's a lot of documentation out there for Java Unified Expression Language too. Okay, that's my tweet adapter. If you're running in a CDI environment, I can use CDI beans here. If you're gonna run in a Spring environment, you can use Spring here, for example. So that's basically a connection to my Java code. So it's a tweet adapter here. This is a CDI bean, it's named. I could basically use the Java, full qualified Java class name. So you don't have to use CDI. Then I have a delegate. So when the process instance moves through the service task, this one is executed. And you get a context where you can, for example, ask a query for process variables, access your service. So I just use Twitter for J to tweet, and basically that's it. Okay. What you do within here, it's Java, so you can do whatever you want. The basic pattern is normally you get some data from your process context, from the variables. You might do some transformation. Then you call it the real service. And if you get something back, you might do a transformation again and store it in the process variable. This is what this delegate should do. And this is attached to the BPMN process model. The review tweet user task needs some configuration as well. For example, I configure who is doing that. Okay, that's pretty simple. In this case, I hard coded it to the demo user. Okay, that's maybe not really realistic. Normally, you would use some kind of group, for example, so the management can do that, or sales, or whatever, or marketing. You could use expression language as well. So you could do something like maybe the author, some object within the process context, and then I could say this has an attribute boss, so I assign it to my boss. Okay, so you can basically leverage Java code here again. Okay, but I leave it for demo user, and I can configure the user interface, the form, which is displayed. In my case, it's a JSF form. I could use embedded HTML forms as well, or I can even use generic forms. We will see it later in the training. Okay, but basically that's it. Just a quick look into that form. Don't want to go into a lot of details, but it's a JSF form. We don't care about the JSF at the moment, but what you can see, I can basically access process variables from within here. For example, that's a great tweet. I want the review tweet. I go to the review tweet, and there I can I have the approve checkbox. Okay, Boolean checkbox, and the value of it goes into the process variable approved. Okay, so when I submit it, I complete the task and I write the process variable approved. And this process variable can be used later in the process. For example, here on the gateway, I decide on the approved variable using expression language again. So this is approved, and I go this way if it's not approved. Okay. Yeah, basically that's it. That's what I need to do here in order to get my BPM running. I think it's not much. It's pretty easy to do. Yeah. In order, maybe one thing to understand how the engine works. If I have this process model, I can run it in my engine, and the engine can be triggered, if you want, from a simple test case. So we can steer the whole engine with the Java API. We have some support for JUnit as well. So I have a JUnit test case in order to show you that briefly. Okay, this is our process engine rule. I use that, JUnit 4 rule. I have a test case, so I want to test the rejected path. Again, I have some data, some variables. Okay. You see that this is a simple map, the Java map, so you can hand in any variable you like. We have a deeper look at that later on as well, but it could be any primary variable, any primitive variable, or any Java object, which is serializable or whatever. That will be stored together with the process instance in the process engine database. And now we can access the process engine. This basically comes from the test case. So what we do here is we start an in-memory process engine with the in-memory database only valid for that test. So that's a pretty small footprint, and it's easy to set up for us. So we have a process engine, and then the process engine knows a couple of services. For example, the runtime service. We can use the runtime service to start a new process instance by using the so-called key. So the key is the Twitter demo process. It's the ID of the Twitter process here. Okay, it's a bit confusing that it's called ID in the BPM